Welcome to season 13 of the Parenting Aces podcast, a proud member of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we are going to be talking about a new way to play our sport. Time tennis is a concept that has been in development for several years now, but is finally coming to fruition. It was piloted at the Atlanta Open last week and to great success, as you will hear from this week's guests, Charles Allen and Yannick Yoshizawa. The two of them are working tirelessly to get time tennis out into the public and to educate as many of us as they can, which is why they chose to come on our podcast. They wanted to talk to the Parenting Aces audience about what time tennis is and why junior tennis families and college tennis kids should be interested in this new way of addressing our sport. So I'm super excited for y'all to hear from Charles and from Yannick. I also want to encourage you to watch the video version so that you can actually see time tennis in action. And yeah, I'm like, can't wait to hear your reaction to this. So I hope you will leave comments for us and let us know what you think. Check out their website, read more about it, and learn about this new format for playing tennis in a team environment, in a time-limited environment, and in an ecosystem that allows the professional players that are drafted onto time tennis teams to actually have a quality of life. Sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Charles and Yannick. Yannick, welcome back to the podcast. Charles, have we done a podcast before? I'm like racking my brain. Okay, because I mean, you and I have had conversations going back at least 10 years.
It seems, yes.
Yes, and weird that we've never done a podcast. So welcome to the podcast. Yannick, last time we talked with you, you were with Sense Arena. You have made a transition over to time tennis. I am so excited for you guys to share time tennis with the Parenting Aces community. Tell us what it is and how we get involved and what its relevance is to junior tennis. We'll jump into all of that in a moment. But to start, Charles, I want you to just kind of give us a quick down and dirty of your tennis background and how you got from where you started in tennis to where you are today. Yannick, we've got your story from past podcasts, so I'll link to those in the show notes for people that want to go back and hear your tennis story.
So this is an accidental and very welcome second career for me. I did have my first career in Silicon Valley. I went off to be a full-time parent. My grandfather played tennis till he was 95. And so I grew up watching tennis on Sunday afternoons with my grandfather. And so there was always a love for tennis. But when my children started playing tennis, I had the space and time. I started doing data visualization as a fun side project. We were living in Croatia, and I became aware that governing bodies were making maybe poor investments in information technology, and there was not a lot of structure to it. My data visualization turned into a tournament management system, which I did for Croatia, and started working with tournament directors around the world. And so they were my mentors, and I became a subject matter expert in running tournaments, the many different flavors of tournaments that were run around the world with different policy approaches. And when it just, so I wrote a paper saying that tennis needed data standards to help direct the funds that the governing bodies were putting into information technology in a better way. And it just so happened I was presenting in Budapest and ran into the executive director at the ITF in a bus and then again in a small room. And it caught his eye. He asked me to send him the paper, and I ended up consulting with the ITF on the development of what is now the Tennis Open Data Standards. And that turned into a conversation about the awarding of the contract to develop the World Tennis Number. I had been submitting data to UTF for a while. I'd been working with Dave Fish and Dave Miley and Bruce Waschuk while they were there. And then it turned into a relationship with the group building the new tournament management system for the USTA. So at this point, that project that I started back when my kids were just starting tennis in Croatia turned into an open source project, which processes all of the tournaments run through the USTA system and the ITA system and a number of other national governing bodies at this point. I met the founder of Time Tennis while living in Croatia. Felix Lucas has run more than 70 tournaments. He owns a WTA event. And so understanding his experience, seeing thousands of players pass through the tournaments he was running, and what his vision for creating a healthier ecosystem for tennis, it was just something I naturally wanted to be part of. And I've been in conversation with him for more than 5 years on that topic. Yannick has been much longer with Felix on that.
Awesome. Yannick, I'm gonna get you to unmute and kind of take us through your transition from what you were doing with Sense Arena to now what you're doing with Time Tennis.
Yeah, well, and thanks for having me back, Lisa. Always fun to be here and speaking to your audience, which is the future, right? And I think that will go along a lot with what we're going to talk about Time Tennis. And I think for me, the transition, as Charles just mentioned, I've known Felix, the founder of Time Tennis, for about 10 years. I've met him when I was working at the Women's Tennis Association at the WTA. And we've stayed in touch, and while I was at the WTA and while I was at Sense Arena, we were having a lot of conversations on how tennis ecosystem could improve from a variety of reasons. And I think when I was at Sense Arena, I saw a lot of that technological, in the future, how people will not only learn how to play tennis but improve their parts of it. And I think as a person, I always felt connected that tennis had to be modernized to the 21st century, to really engage more the youth, not only from a participation standpoint, but also from watching, right? Creating these fans, these fanatics since a very young age, which I think it was very much needed, and then I think as we continue to develop the project, there were a lot of turning wheels, and as of end of last year, that was sort of when it started to grow momentum. But I've been working with Felix for 6-7 years on this idea, and really it started to evolve more during COVID. But and here, yeah, but that was mainly my transition, is that I saw that an opportunity to make more of an impact from a holistic ecosystem per se.
And I don't know which one of you wants to take this, but I would love one of you to just kind of talk us through what Time Tennis is for those that are not familiar with it.
Let's just start, Yannick.
Sure. And I think to give a little bit of context before we get into those transition to Charles, maybe, but to give a little bit of the background, when Felix and I, started talking about tennis in general 10 years ago, we always felt that there were two big parts of this. One, which was the experience of a fan in a tennis tournaments per se. And in a lot of ways, it wasn't the easiest fan experience. When you go to a tennis tournament, there's a lot of friction and obstacles for you to be engaged, right? From the tradition of being quiet to the tradition of having music and the umpires telling kids to be quiet when they're cheering, to being very focused on tennis only. And other aspects of it, the tradition of tennis, which is great, but at the same time, it was a big friction when you're trying to explain how tennis rules work, right? Like I have definitely a lot of friends who are not tennis fanatics nor grew up playing tennis, and just to explain how the rules of tennis, from 15 to 30 to games to sets, and then to tell them, hey, we might have to miss dinner reservations because I don't know when the match is going to finish, and so on. And the second part was a lot because of the players' health and lifestyle, right? I think when people look at tennis in general, they see the glamorous, the top players competing, having this traveling lifestyle and living in five-star hotels. But a lot of, and I'm sure a lot of these juniors know, and as they're transitioning from their junior careers to either college or trying to go pro directly, it's not easy, right? It's a lot of burden. It's a financial burden. It's a lifestyle, because you have to travel. It's a global sport and whatnot. So now going into a little bit, and I'll start and then I'll pass it on to Charles. Those were the two premises that it got us thinking, okay, how can we improve that? So in a nutshell, to start, we need to look from the format of tennis, how to make it more friendly from fans to broadcasters to players to all stakeholders involved. So we start, okay, there needs to be a beginning and an end, right? Because that solves a lot of problems that tennis exists. So that's where time tennis, as a lot of people can assume, it's time bound. So it's 30 minutes of a match. So when you look at 30 minutes, a lot of people's reaction is like, oh my gosh, this is very short, right? But when we look at tennis, a lot of these tennis matches, the average of actually active playing is about only 20%, right? So if you're playing, for 5 hours on these Grand Slams, actually tennis is only been playing for an hour. So if you look at the average tennis match, which is about an hour and a half to 2 hours, they're actually only playing for 30 minutes, right? So we actually were like, okay, how can we actually make it more impactful, dynamic, concise? So that's, okay, we're going to decrease to 30 minutes, but we're going to make it more fast paced. So we've changed a couple rules to decrease that time, such as one serve, there is no lets, no servers continue to serve until they lose the point. The servers don't have to wait for the returner to be ready. So, all these small rule changes that we've created, it allowed the match to be much more fast-paced, which now we're getting to about 60% of active play. So when we look at those 30 minutes, we've ran a bunch of tests from amateurs to professionals, and they say it seems that I'm playing a three-set match, which in theory, that's what it is, right? In just a much more concise way. So I think that's where a little bit we started with the rules, right? To create that aspect and modernize the attention span of all of us is decreasing, make it more digital friendly, make it more broadcast friendly, and players, right? I'm sure, kids and juniors, I grew up playing tennis, and I love the follow bys, right? Like you always, oh, you're third from 11, you're third from 10. What does that mean, right? You could be playing at 1 p.m., you could be playing at 4 p.m. And not only from kids themselves, from parents, right? Like parents figuring out when my kid should eat, when is she gonna, like warm up, like the recovery time, and all these different things are simplified when you have a beginning and an end, right? And that doesn't take away from the engagement, for the fun, it actually creates even more because it's so intense, right? And then maybe I'll pass to Charles here to touch a little bit more of the other aspects, why we're now creating a league, a professional league starting this year, um, as well as, how we are thinking about teams, about like bringing that sports fans to tennis as well, which I think we've had a hard time, for that. And as well as that local community, right? As a kid, I'm from Brazil, and a lot of people might know who Guga is, and that was my association with tennis. He was my idol. But unfortunately, when he retired, I was like, okay, who do I cheer for, right? You could have the Roger Federers, the Nadals, but in a way, it's not as easy to relate as it is, if you live in Atlanta and you have, the Atlanta Falcons, and he might not be the best quarterback or wide receiver, but I can say, well, he lives in Atlanta, right? He goes to the same restaurants that I go to, right? So there's a lot of different aspects that you can create from that local community and local stars. And last thing I'll say here, because I can go on forever, but it's really this pathway, right? From juniors, in college tennis, I'm very happy that it continues to grow, not only in the US, but internationally, right? As a pathway to the professional. But that pathway from either juniors or college to the pros, it's extremely, extremely hard. Unless you have a great financial backing from your parents or investors or sponsors, you're probably, spending a good 50K, or 100K, whatever that is, depending where you're from as well. That takes a huge part. So we're creating like a continuous pathway for you to just have a better lifestyle. And, tennis being the fourth uh, most popular sport in the world, there should be more than 200 players making a living in the end, right? And those players who are 15, 16, they should not worry too much if they're going to be able to make a living or not, unless they're top 100 in the world, right? So Charles, I'll let you compliment and finish here.
Sure. So, I mean, what Yannick is describing is a rethinking of tennis, soup to nuts, top to bottom. And so we just spent 9 days at the Atlanta Open here, talking to people from the beginning to the bitter end. And my voice is probably a bit lower now from all of that talking, and my jaw certainly has had a lot more exercise. But the things that resonated with people, I think the thing that was most surprising to me was the number of people, amateurs and juniors, who were like, where can I play this? When can I play this? Because as Yannick said, we're launching a pro team tennis league. So this is a card we handed out, which is the rethinking. And we can go through some of this: rethinking culture, rethinking teams, rethinking structure, rethinking scoring. It is comprehensive. It's a lot to talk about because it has been thought through from all the stakeholders' point of view. It's a holistic and complete vision for how tennis can be, healthier and more sustainable for all parties. So I guess maybe we can start into this with the thing that you asked me first, Lisa, which is what's in it for your constituents.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to tell this story. On Friday evening, we've been going through weeks of talking to people. There was a young 12-year-old who came by. He'd been walking by throughout the week, and he came by and got the spiel, took this card home. On Sunday afternoon, the father of that child, he's 12. He's in the top 100 in the 12 age group nationally. Came by and said, "My son came home on Friday evening and showed me this card and he said, Dad, this is the tennis I want to play." And he described that even though his kid was in the top 100, he was thinking of changing sports because he was feeling too much pressure. The ratings were mentioned, worried about getting his rating up and all of this. But when he saw this and heard it, he said, "This is what I'll play." So Saturday, this made sense to me then because this is a ball kid. Saturday, a large group of ball kids came up to our tent just before the gates opened. And they're like, "You have to tell us what time tennis is." And they all sat there and listened and interacted to the whole thing, which was great. We gave them all T-shirts. They went away. And then Sunday, this father came and told me about his son and said, "You need to come with me now to meet Patricia Jensen." And Patricia Jensen was running the ball kids. She's run the ball kids for the Atlanta Open since its beginning. And she is also responsible for the Golden Retrievers, the ball kids for Georgia Tech's team. I think it's maybe the only college team that has ball kids. And so
Let me also interject. She's also a tennis parent extraordinaire.
Extraordinary. Four professional. Her children were all professional tennis players. Her boys won the French Open. Pairs of her children made it to the quarterfinals in mixed doubles. I mean, they were professional players, and yes, they have an incredible family history, and she's an incredible woman.
And her daughter was my coach.
Okay, great. So I just got
most
back.
Importantly,
I just spent an hour and a half talking with her about time tennis and all of the ways in which this resonates with what she has witnessed in her life about where tennis is at this moment. So that was an inspiring, really fun story. So we have chosen to launch Time Tennis in Atlanta. This will be the first hub, and the goal is to open hubs in many other areas of the United States and of the world. But
and
the
you
first
chose Atlanta because, I mean, I know because you live there, but why
well,
else?
but I live here in part. Yes, I was born in Georgia, but I live here in part because it's the largest tennis city in the world, really, right? We've got Alta with roughly 70,000 members. You've got a lot of USTA leagues in addition to Alta leagues, and a lot of other ferment, frankly.
Yeah.
So you have a broad range of tennis skills and enthusiasts.
Yeah.
One of the other things that that resonated from the Atlanta Open I want to interject is that people agreed across the board. Tennis has tennis fans, but tennis doesn't have sport fans, right? The average age of a tennis fan is really up there. They say that it's 61. I find that hard to believe, but that's the statistic. For women, it's 55. The other sports are innovating, and everyone is familiar with what Live Golf is doing. You can talk about Kings League in soccer. You can talk about the Big Three in basketball. You can talk. There's all this innovation in tennis has not really innovated. There's really small tweaks. This sport started out as, Yannick Jeu de Paume became the Royal Tennis, and then it became in the late 1800s lawn tennis. And we're still playing lawn tennis today, right?
Yeah.
Yannick mentioned the attention span, but what happens around sport is changing. How people are interacting with fans is changing. And so this league that we're building is very different in that we are hiring players and putting them on contract and giving them a salary with the upside of prize money. But we're not hiring them just to be players, and we're not hiring them just for their athletic prowess. We're hiring them for their entrepreneurial drive, for their passion for interacting with the fans, for their passion for transforming the sport. So in addition to getting a salary and year-round coaching and benefits, they will be entrepreneurs helping us engage with the local community. They will be available to the local kids, the local adults. They will participate in running local events, and they will be hitting partners with high performance and all level of players in the community. So it's a very different type of energy. Other things that are out there in the marketplace have tried to fit in the gaps between pro tennis. We're not trying to do that at all. We're going to do a draft right out of college. And so at our first event in November, there will be a combine and a draft. And we'll start with the 4 teams then, and the 5th and 6th teams will be built from the players that we draft at that event.
So you're talking about teams. Let's dive into that piece of it too, because that kind of got lost a little bit.
Well, I'll let Yannick talk about the structure of the events and how the team works. Yeah.
Okay. Yannick, you're up.
Yeah, sure. Well, but I think to your point, let's start with the teams, right? So I think one important thing for us as a league was to make sure that there was equality, right? I think there's a lot of conversations, about the sports and the differences between men and women and prize money and salaries and so on. But no one really wants to address the big elephant in the room, and everyone just tries to. So one thing is that all teams will have the same amount of men and the same amount of women in the same team, right? So that will start with 4 players, 2 men and 2 women, increase to 6 players, 3 men and 3 women. They all be paid the same, right? With also the upside of trying to win prize money, which I think, the performance will dictate that bonuses per se as well. So that's how the teams, and as Charles mentioned, we'll start with 4 teams as this hyper season, 1 event at the end of this year. And then next year, we'll have 6 events with 6 teams. Now, what we wanted to make sure is that while we're bringing this team environment on, which is extremely important in a still individual sport, is because your lifestyle, tennis, not apart from travel, it's very lonely, right? So while at the same time, that is one of the beauties of tennis. It's that individual, figure it out, trying to, better yourself. So there's a lot of life lessons that you learn from tennis. So we wanted to keep that as well. So the event structure, you have 6 teams, and all the teams will have a represented in 3 different events that are running at the same time: men's singles, women's singles, and mixed doubles. So those 3 events are running parallel together, right? And then you as individual are competing for your individual performance while you're still accumulating points for the team overall, right? So I think for people who watch, racing, that's very much how Formula One works. The individual driver gets points and then accumulates for the team. So and then at the end of the event, you have a men's singles winner, a women's singles winner, a mixed doubles winner, and a team winner that will split among everybody on the team along with the coach. Apart from that, coaching, it's extremely important in tennis today, and then as juniors, especially tennis, it's not the most efficient when it comes to coaching.
Yeah.
Right? Because, it's a one player to one coach, and where are you gonna find, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of great coaches, right? Which there might be out there, but it's very tough. So when you look at other sports, it's one coach per at least 6, 7, if not more players, right?
Right.
So that's what we wanted to create, is that then all players actually have access to quality coaching, right? And it's not on one by one, but we selectively choose these coaches to then be able to make an impact on these players equally, right? And not allowing just basically, depending where you're from, depending on your financial situation, and so forth, so forth. So that's a little bit more, and then during the 6 events that we have as our official first season, then the 2 teams who finish best will play a finals at the end of the year, the team versus team.
So let me just clarify. Is there a set season for time tennis that would make it different from how the men's and women's tours are set up now, where it's just continuous?
Yeah, there is definitely May through October. It's a 6-month season. And when Yannick's mentioning the 6 events, those are the 6 big events. We call those a rush. And a rush is a 3-day event. So in traditional tennis tournaments, you start with a big first round, and it gets smaller, smaller, smaller over time. In our events, the entire event happens on a single court at the pro level. So all of the fan energy is in one place, and you have the same amount throughout the rush. So the sessions there's 6 sessions with 4 teams, 7 sessions when there's 6 teams, and you have 3 matches per session. And so the sessions are 2.5 hours roughly. And in that session, you see 3 matches: a male singles, female singles, mixed doubles. And so you see an hour and a half of play. So you have a consistent product. You know what you're going to see. You know when you're going to see it. You know when it's going to end. And we need to describe more about the structure here, because we said 2 15-minute halves. There's a 2-minute halftime show. Each team has 1 timeout per half, and the team can do substitutions. That means that you never have a retirement, you never have a walkover, you never have a match that gets canceled, you never have something you pay for that you don't see, right? Mm-hmm. So it also means that we have the opportunity within this, it's basically Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday, within this period of time, to do other things like theming the sessions for different groups of fans that may want to see it another way. So this is an experience. You're seeing a high level of tennis, but you're also experiencing it in a way where you can be a sports fan, the players can interact directly with the audience and they can show their emotions as well. And not only the players, but also you've got the coaches there, live coaching. You've got the teams on the sideline. There's no chair umpire. There's automatic line calling with no video review, and there's a referee walking around like you might see referees on a basketball court. So the energy, the narrative structure, all of it is very different.
So the season runs May through October. Does that then preclude your players from participating in the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open?
It does, yes, because these players are on a full-time salary and they are working in the community, running events themselves, training. They are we are investing not only in their salaries and their coaching, but in their we're making stars. We're making local stars. We're investing in them as people in terms of how they're visible to the public, but also the things they get to experience in helping the project.
So who are you? I mean, what level of player are you looking at drafting onto the teams? I mean, are we looking at the top 100 ATP and WTA players, or are we looking at 250 and below?
So we're taking talent that wants to play this, and believe it or not, Felix and Yannick can attest to this. Felix has seen thousands of players pass through the 70 tournaments that he's run. Mm-hmm. Right?
Sure.
There are a lot of people, believe it or not, who actually want to have quality of life. Who want to be able to live somewhere and have a house plant that doesn't die, and maybe a pet, maybe a girlfriend or boyfriend, and actually be part of something. Yeah. Right? There's some people who have tried it. I don't know if you saw the book that just came out titled The Racket, which is about the guy who was #1 in Ireland and what it was like trying to be on the road with the other 99% who don't make it. Yeah. Right? But still,
I've interviewed those people. I mean, they've been on the podcast. Yeah.
There is deep talent out there. And there are a lot of structural reasons why some of them don't make it, right? Whether they don't have the financial footing or whether they just have bad luck, mm-hmm. In terms of when they have injury, whatnot. So yes, we'll take player that's 150, 200, but I don't think that's necessary because there is incredible talent, incredible personality, within the top 1,000. Right. And there are players that have taken jobs and still compete at a very high level outside of the tour. In Atlanta, we have Atlanta Team Tennis. We have the Atlanta Pro League. We have phenomenal players here. So you may see that type of player. You may see someone who's just had enough trying. And you may also see players say, hey, before I go and try to do one of those tours, I can get a salary. I can get a year full of coaching. I can have all of this investment. And then maybe go try. But I think you've spoken with Todd Wojtkowski before. Mm-hmm. You spoke with him. Did he tell you the story about his interaction with Dave Fish when he was a young coach?
No.
So the story is he was sitting at the table with Dave Fish, and he said, Dave, what does it take to become a coach of an Ivy League?
And for those who don't know, Dave was the men's tennis coach at Harvard for many, many years.
And so Dave said, I think you're looking at this the wrong way. He said, make the place you are the place you want to be. And so Todd, took Case Western Reserve from the bottom to the top, right? And then he got an offer from an Ivy League college, which he turned down. So in my mind, yes, you may see this stage of time tennis. You may see the vision. You may see the lifestyle you can have, all the investment that you can make in yourself through this. And my belief is that 2 or 3 years in, this will be the place they really want to be, and say, well, maybe I don't really need to go out and do that other thing. Right?
Yeah. I love that. I think that's great. And so at this stage of things, time tennis is being viewed as a professional team league.
Yes.
Will there be junior leagues popping up? Will there be collegiate leagues popping up? What are your thoughts for how this is going to grow
So,
and
so
expand.
Yannick mentioned the 6 rushes, but we actually are doing 6 on the road events as well between the rushes. And we have a third tier event, which is called a dare event. And this will be
I love all the names.
where we take a team and we challenge a community. We can go to Greenville, we can go to Chattanooga, we can go to Charleston. Give us your best players to go against one of our teams. But as I mentioned, the other 6 months of the year, our players work with us in delivering events. I was actually really blown away by the number of people that run tennis facilities who came and said, when can I run an event at my facility?
Mhm.
Right? And people that said, well, I'm not good enough for your pro league. When can I play? Right?
Yeah.
So we are doing roughly 2 events per month at the local level, and we'll be running some prize money events for juniors and amateurs. And we'll be running just some. One of the most fun things we did this summer was we went into a local tennis facility where they were having a barbecue, and we brought in a dozen college players, and they're already excited to see a high-level player, but we did it with time tennis. Level, intensity, and their reaction was great. So we're going to be doing things to make it possible for local players to put on local demonstrations and also get some prize money as well as some of those tournaments.
And
Yeah,
so
and then-
go ahead, Yannick.
Sorry, no, I would just want to say this. And then, of course, as people are listening, you definitely want to welcome, if you do, of course, we're in Atlanta, but if you are interested in running, learning more, and, we want to expand to more communities in the US, we are, love to talk more, and people to start running their own events, because in the end, I truly think that's better for tennis, right? We talked a lot about the pro, but as Felix had this mind of an ecosystem perspective, we ran tons of amateur events already as well. And to give you an example, with the most recent one we did run in Croatia in June, and during a whole 7 days of a professional tennis tournament, they had 57 matches across 10 days, right? We had a time tennis amateur event in 8 hours in 5 courts, and we had 58 matches.
Wow.
And we started at 9 a.m. and everyone left at 6 p.m. Everyone knew when they were going to start. They knew when they were going to end. They knew when they could have lunch. They knew where they could have dinner. They could still go out and watch a movie at the end of the day.
And the energy was also more incredible because, you didn't have people leave. They were all there to, be spectators and fans as well as compete during it.
Yeah.
So we will, during our events, we're going to have a fan court where people can try time tennis. They finish their session. They're not going to be the next session. They can try it themselves there. But Yannick, you could also talk about the what you did in Brazil.
Yeah. So in Brazil, actually, that was right after COVID, in 2022, late 2021. But we ran 6 also events, which there was this company that had a bunch of doctors, and they ran 6 events, and where they could only do for one day. And they always had issues because, these doctors would come in the morning. They never knew when they were going to end. They didn't know if they were going to play 1 match or 5 matches. So, it was basically a whole day that they had to remove everything else. So, we ran 6 events, over 200 players played there. And as we've talked a lot about it, right? Like there's nothing for people to compare to it. But actually, once you're like, wow, this could be much more efficient, from a tournament organizer standpoint, from a parent standpoint, from a junior standpoint, from an amateur standpoint, just to optimize your experience in a tennis court, that can just continue to evolve the ecosystem in general, right? Like if you are part of a club, a country club, and you go and you have 1 hour to play, and what do you play? Do you play what? Do you try to play a set, but then you're in the middle of the set and you have to get off, right? Like, or you don't have. So there's a lot of complications that we're trying to continue to evolve. And again, if there are tournament organizers there, or parents that want to, again, this will make everyone's life easier in the end.
You don't need AI to schedule a time tennis tournament.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's say there are parents watching this and tournament directors watching this, and they're like, okay, yeah, let's try this. Let's see how it goes at our facility or in our town. How do they go about setting up an event? Do they just reach out to you guys and
Yeah, they'll
you'll
reach out
walk
to
them
us.
through it?
So we're working, there is a technology component here, Lisa, because there's time. And
Yeah.
so when we ran the event that Yannick referenced last month, we had basically 5 scorekeepers on the court.
Mhm.
And so the players didn't need to worry about keeping score because there's a scorekeeper there. I'm sure many of your viewers are familiar with Ion Court, which is used for the live scoring. If you haven't had Nicola on, Nicola would be a good guest.
Okay.
But Nicola, Ion Court's being used for more than 50% of the college matches now. It's being used at Kalamazoo next week. It's been used in the Orange Bowl. It's been used for a lot of high school tennis in Texas in particular. So Ion Court has worked with us to create the referee interface for time tennis. So that exists. When we're doing the events that we're showing up at, we are bringing basically an LCD screen and using Ion Court to keep the timers and keep the scoring.
Okay.
And so what we'll be doing is basically providing guidance on how to use various technologies, and eventually we'll be providing a technology kit for people.
Love that. All right. And we'll have contact info for you guys. We'll have a link to your website. Those of you who are listening to this, I want to encourage you to watch the video version because we're going to have some video to show you time tennis in action. And I want you to be able to see that. What else do we need to talk about before we wrap this thing up, guys?
I'll just say again, we welcome the community to be part of this, as well as we just posted on LinkedIn and also on our website for any players who want to become part of time tennis on this inaugural season of ours. So feel free to go to our website. There is an application form for tennis players there as well. And yeah, it's about spreading the word, helping us grow, and at the end of the day, right, we are all tennis lovers, right? And we want to continue the sport itself to succeed and grow in the many years to come. So that's from my side. And thank you, Lisa, again for having me.
Of course.
Great to have you.
Charles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well,
we could talk forever, but
I know. Let me ask you one last question, though, it just popped in my head. Is time tennis looking to replace the current tennis ecosystem, or is time tennis looking to work alongside the current tennis ecosystem?
So we have had a number of governing bodies already reach out and express some interest, and so it'll be a hybrid approach. There is a great opportunity for us to work within existing structures. So I mean, we don't see ourselves as oppositional. We see ourselves as doing something good for the health of the sport, the health of the players, and to help bring new fans to the sport. Because at the end of the day, if we don't attract the younger generations, then the sport is being eroded by some other forces, and we need to bring the energy back. We need to bring the social energy back. Like the event where we had 5 courts with 48 players doing an entire event one day. You can use courts more efficiently to have more people, and the more people you have there, the more energy you have there. And if you're on teams, you've got the team energy. And I think that some tennis has been lost to people who are want that or missing that social energy.
Yeah,
so I think
agree.
That.
Okay, awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much. I look forward to really following the progress, following the draft and the first events that are coming, and next time I'm in Atlanta, hopefully there'll be an event coming on and I can come see it, or you'll come out here to SoCal and put something on. We certainly have our share of tennis players out here,
You do. Yep.
players and fans that would welcome something new to watch. So congratulations for all the success you're having already, and best of luck as this thing takes off.
Thanks again.
To my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you next time on Parenting Aces.